What is going on, everyone? Today is March 20th, 2024. My name's Anthony Santini. You are tuned in to the Invest in Hockey podcast. Today, I am joined with
Eric Wilson.
And we are going to be chatting about the NHL, the sport of hockey, everything that's happened in the past week, everything that might happen going forward into next week. And I want to pretty much start off this podcast talking about fantasy playoffs, because I know a lot of hockey listeners out there have been stressing maybe a little bit about how the first 3 days have gone for them. But hey, me perfectly, I don't want to toot my own horn, but heading into the fantasy playoffs as the number 1 seed, I'm feeling pretty good. Eric, how are you feeling about your fantasy playoff?
I'll be completely honest. I'm in about 4 to 5 leagues, and I'm only in the playoffs for 2 of them. The league that we're in together with a lot of our buddies, I unfortunately was the 9 seed, so I did not make the playoffs, and I'm going to be looking at a lottery pick where I think I have a 12% chance of getting the first overall pick. So obviously we're in a keeper league, and I wanted to kind of shift that focus to you and how you're feeling as the 1 seed, and obviously it's the quarters, right? So what are you feeling this week?
I mean, it's the quarters, so obviously there's still a lot to go. I don't want to get too ahead of myself. My team, I'm feeling good. Couple notable players on my team for anyone listening out there. We got Rasmus Dahlin, Austin Matthews, Sam Reinhart. So a couple good players. Nico Hischier stepped up for me. And then my goalies, who I've just loved this year, rocking with both Winnipeg Jets goalies, Cam Talbot and Sergei Bobrovsky. So I mean, it's been 24, or I guess now this would be the 25th week of fantasy hockey. So definitely been a massive aspect of the past 5-6 months. So I'm definitely looking forward to the playoffs, and hopefully I could beat my opponent, but best of luck to everyone as well.
Yeah, for sure. Honestly, I kind of have to only focus on the two leagues that I'm in, but I'm looking forward to them, and I'm hoping I can bring home some sort of hardware. But definitely good a good vibe for fantasy playoffs, especially in the month of March, right?
Well, it's the best time for March because you have fantasy playoffs going on for hockey. You also have March Madness coming around the corner. Exams are coming around, but now's like the weird period in time where it's like you don't have a lot of homework, but you don't have much to study for. You don't have like a lot of papers. So just the little things that can catch up to you. So March has been pretty good. Shout out everyone that had March break last week. I was doing my school placement just this morning with Aiden, and it felt like all the kids were just kind of complaining about being back in school. So that was kind of funny. And I was talking to one kid that was actually a hockey player, and he was talking about how he went to a hockey camp on March break. And it just brought me back to when I was a kid playing in the hockey camps. And it was like, you know what? It felt like I didn't really skip a beat when I was headed back to school, because it was like, all right, get up at 8 a.m., head over to camp, be on the ice for 9. Then you get picked up by 3. So it's like the same routine as being in school.
Oh yeah, no, I totally agree with that routine, and then seeing the complaints when you're back on the Monday, and it's like pull out the school books, pull out the textbooks. You have a quiz on Friday or something, and it's like, oh man, definitely hits you hard. I mean, I could agree with your topic about nothing crazy in March, but April's gonna hit us pretty hard with our exams, so I think we're gonna really have to shift the focus to that in terms of school. But to stick to hockey, I think a lot of the NHL and professional players are looking forward to their playoffs, which will be about 3-4 weeks from now at the earliest, right? So we got OHL playoffs coming up, which means once a lot of players get eliminated from the OHL, they could possibly be looking at being called up to the NHL, things like that. What are you most excited for?
I mean, just a lot of the next coming weeks where players could kind of step out of their shell. And I know you want to touch on some of the minor hockey stuff going on with the OHL, Kitchener IceDogs, all that good stuff. But we were able to actually catch a game a month ago, and I was going to ask you, I don't know, I think we should go watch another IceDogs game because, I mean, it was chill. Like, it was only, a couple bucks? The tickets were like $5 a person. The food was good. The seats were good. I mean, just looking forward to the playoffs and what's to come. Hockey is finally starting to feel interesting. And although the first 60-ish games were a lot of fun to watch, obviously it all comes down to the playoffs. And we look at the teams like Minnesota. We look at teams like Philly, Washington, Buffalo trying to establish themselves as a real playoff team and find a wild card spot. Or even we see the Flyers and Washington fighting for position now in the playoffs. to get that number 1 seed in the division. So hockey is starting to get really interesting, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's honestly, I hate to look at the sad part, but once all those playoffs are over, we're gonna have to figure out something to occupy our time with. So I mean, obviously we'll be doing the weekly podcast, but when you can't talk about what happened last night in the NHL and things like that, Philly over the Leafs game where Tippett looked great, Frost looked great, it's gonna be tougher when there's not really anything great on SportsCenter, right? So to get to that OHL focus there, we had the Kitchener Rangers do a bit of a player-led interview where I don't remember exactly which player it was. I think his name was Hunter something on the Kitchener Rangers. He interviewed the reporter about how the reporter thought the Rangers played, and I think it was pretty sick because the Rangers got a win, and it was almost like they must have taken a few minutes to plan that, but I don't think that was on the script for that night, right?
I mean, I saw that interview. I saw it on Twitter, and it was kind of funny. Like, it's cool when you see television do funny things like that. Even for me, like working in television, I look at something like that, I'm like, wow, like people really have it's such a basic idea, but it's just hilarious. Like, I loved it. It was great. It was like I would have almost never thought of something like that. And we saw the player interview the interviewee, if that's what we want to call it, and he kind of said, what type of, the funniest aspect of the entire interview was he asked him, what do you think is a favorable matchup for the Rangers in the playoffs? And he actually said whatever is the least travel, or whatever is the shortest travel team. So I thought that was absolutely hilarious. It opens up the floodgates to players and media, and obviously it's such a developing world with sports right now where commercialism is just getting started, and we're seeing that right now even coming in the OHL, the AHL, the GTHL, and some of these lower leagues. So for me, I thought that was a fantastic opportunity for the player.
Yeah, and I'm kind of shifting to where we are in Niagara. We had Ivan Galiyanov, who I believe was a first rounder last year. He interviewed Artem Frolov from the Niagara IceDogs after their win against, I believe it was Barrie. So I think they won 3-0 the other day, which was kind of an upset win. But that was pretty cool as well because you have two guys interviewing each other. Reporters probably just sitting back and relaxing, which is kind of nice for him to get a bit of a break. But that was cool, and it made me actually shift a little bit to the UNB Reds, the university hockey team, which I don't think they're getting enough traction on the internet or anything, but 38-0-0, literally perfect season, no flaws at all, and like honestly, the Hockey News covered it really well, but they let 0 goals in the national championships for university hockey, and I think it's just incredible to see like the path and journey that these players have been on, and to see like everyone kind of ended up on this UNB team the last 2-3 years. There's no real veterans on this team that are super old, have been there forever, and to see a team go 38-0, like what do you have to say about that?
I mean, it's ridiculous the consistency that they showed, and I've talked about having university hockey taken more literally and more serious, and obviously for us watching the Brock team, I mean, Brock was good last year. I believe they're playing in nationals this year. And, UNB to go 38-0, and like you said, no goals let in the playoffs, I believe was the correct stat. It's just crazy for students especially to focus on school, to focus on sports, to focus on, their aspirations for the NHL. And when you look at a team that could go 38-0, that's just ridiculous, man. Like, it's insane to even hear something like that. A team going 38-0. Like, how do you even show up to the rink? How do you show up to the rink if you're the other team and be like, you know what, like, we're going to win? So it was amazing to hear, and obviously I think our buddy was able to predict that this was going to be one of the best teams in the OUA sports. So definitely something to look forward to if you are a fan of university hockey.
Yeah, it's just crazy to me to think, like, you can be like 8 games into a season, be like 7-1, and then you have to think to yourself, okay, we're not going to replicate a 38-0 season, but we could have a really good year. Like it almost reminds me of the Bruins last year when they had 7 regulation losses in 82 games, and you're like, okay, you're not going to replicate that, but like it's still history, right? Like so, it's pretty sick seeing the record books and seeing U Sports and university take a toll like that, right?
Yeah, so many teams that have had just an incredible season, and I want to shift back to the NHL. And although the Leafs really haven't looked astonishing this year, although it's kind of felt that way. I mean, they're 12-0-3, or was it 12-3-0? I believe the stat was last week. In their past 15 games, they've looked pretty good. They still find themselves I don't know if I want to say struggling in the Atlantic Division, but in a division that's just so strong and has given the Leafs so much trouble in the past couple years. Finally, it looks like they're going to head into the playoffs with an opportunity to look at a team that they haven't seen in a couple years. I know you want to touch on a quote made by Adam Copeland.
Yeah, I'm super passionate about this quote, and I was really entertained to watch Adam Copeland on Jay Onright's show there. But the term "just make the playoffs" is so true for any fan that actually watches hockey and any fan that's been watching the playoffs for years. We've touched on it in past podcasts, Sans, but making the playoffs is important, and I think that it gets overlooked when you see one Stanley Cup champion, because you forget the 14 teams and you only really remember the team that was in the finals and lost in the finals, right? So it's really important to me, because it's like you play an 82 game season and you can't just wash that out the window. If you make the playoffs, you're giving your team a chance to get hot, have a hot goalie, and kind of bring that team atmosphere to, call it 20-plus games in the playoffs, right? You could go 7 series of 4, that's 28 games already, right? So, you're there for a long time, and you're there for a journey, and I think, Adam Copeland was pretty much saying the Leafs need to get hot at the right time, and that anyone can beat anyone, right? So I think it's really interesting that, we even see this with March Madness starting. Nobody can predict what's going to happen, and it's that's where that suspense and the unpredictability comes in, right?
Yeah, that's where it comes in for sure. And for anyone wondering, Adam Copeland is a professional wrestler who was on the Jay Onright show. Personally, no bias, but one of my favorite shows to watch. I've always found Jay very entertaining. And I saw Jay doing the interview with Adam Copeland, and I was a little bit confused. I mean, it doesn't really sound on brand for a if I want to say a mainly hockey-driven / basketball-driven show to have professional wrestling. At first, I was very interested to see it, almost confused. But then as I started to watch the interview, and I think it was a 20-minute interview almost of a 60-minute show, he kind of had the hockey knowledge to really make you think. And like you said, the Leafs are in a position right now where they just have to make the playoffs, get in, almost looking like what Florida did last year. And they're looking at a whole different game. So if you're a Leafs fan right now, I don't know how optimistic you want to feel, but watching them play this year, I mean, Matthews is close to 60 goals. Their power play is looking pretty good. Some of their younger guys are finally starting to step up, and maybe goaltending isn't an issue as much.
Yeah, and Sans, I'm all about positivity, but I will bring up just this tad of critique, because I was so passionate during that Flyers-Leafs game, but if the Leafs don't play a 60-minute game, they're not going to win. And we saw them lose to Philly, who didn't look that great. They just outperformed the Leafs. They played 60 minutes, and while their third period they were dominated by the Leafs, they played a better 60 overall. And when you have the lead, it's so much easier to win the game than when you don't, right? And of course the Leafs were close there, close to tying it, close to getting the job done. But it's you can't be doing that. You can't be losing to teams like Philly if you really want to be serious and have the best chance to win in the playoffs, get home ice advantage, things like that, right? So sorry to be negative there. I'll move on to a positive aspect, like you were talking about the superstars in Austin Matthews, William Nylander. Do you think any of these Leafs will be on this new behind-the-scenes series on Amazon?
Yeah, that's the topic of conversation right now. And although a lot of people on Twitter have been talking about the NHL GMs meeting and a lot of rule changes, something that's kind of come out of it something that has come out of it as well is a 12-player docu-series behind the scenes from Amazon. So we've seen them do it with the Leafs. I believe it's called, is it Leafs in Blue or Bleed Blue or something? I remember watching it the first year it came out. But it's going to be pretty cool, because for me personally, I've been watching a lot of Full Swing on Netflix, which is the golf documentary. And I've been watching the F1, Formula 1, Drive to Survive. So just bringing that aspect of hockey into an Amazon behind the scenes series is going to be amazing. I don't know if you remember, Eric, or watched it, but the first new season of Formula 1 Drive to Survive actually spiked the views and purchases, online purchases, people watching, everything, just for how well that series went for Netflix. So I'm hoping that if the NHL can do this correctly, it could be big for the NHL.
Yeah, I know you were a big fan of that. I kind of was. I wasn't watching with you, but I saw you watching a lot of that F1 stuff, and it did look interesting. They put a lot of time time into it, which is pretty awesome. I can see a lot of kind of good players or interesting players being looked at, whether that's young guys like maybe the Hughes brothers get some behind the scenes looks, or the classic guys like Pasta would be nice, right? But I definitely think a guy like Matthews or Willie would be a staple in that. So definitely cool.
Yeah, easily if you're Amazon right now, if you're the production staff, you have to kind of break down who and what kind of players you want. If it were me personally, I mean, maybe I'd go with 3 veterans, 3 rookies, 3 stars, 2 goalies, maybe a coach. I know it's a 12-player docu-series, I believe. But I don't know, just having like that all aspect bought into this docu-series, I think it's going to be very great for the game. I mean, borderline, I mean, I'm going to be watching it first day. I'll be watching it 100%.
Yeah, and like would you put like maybe a third liner, fourth liner in there? I saw like they put some decent quarterbacks in that football one, but obviously they didn't just put the stars, right?
I mean, having like Marcus Mariota in the football documentary was pretty interesting because a player that was, I don't know if he won the Heisman or he's up for the Heisman, his career's kind of trickled off, but like you said, a third, fourth liner could provide a lot of opportunity for a series like this. Like imagine having Ryan Reeves. Like there's a lot of guys out there with big personalities. You look at Connor McDavid, there's been so many jokes about him saying that he has no personality, he can't make jokes, he's not very personable. Although he is serious about the game, I don't know how well that will drive up the views for something like this. At the end of the day, the internet's run by clips, TikToks, all kind of things like that. Maybe a player like Ryan Reeves would provide a lot of opportunity for a show like this on Amazon.
Yeah, again, it's not all about the best players in the world. It's not about the most accomplishments you've had in your hockey career, right? But when we kind of shift back to what our focus was for today, like we have a lot of awards that are kind of being spoken about and narrowed down, right? Like we've mentioned a lot about 4 players being considered for the Hart Trophy and how it won't increase, but it's only going to go down into talk about 3 players, 2 players. What are your thoughts on the Hart Trophy and then some other awards as well?
I mean, the Hart is one of those trophies that this year has been debated a lot, and there's just been so many options for it that it's going to be super interesting when it comes down to it. It's always weird because for me, even looking at the NFL as well, along with the NHL, it's such a big conversation topic of conversation during the regular season that by the time they actually announce the awards, it's not even like people really care. Like by the time could you even tell me who the NFL MVP was this year?
I'm gonna assume it was Mahomes.
I right off the top, it was Lamar Jackson actually. But you know what I mean? Like all season we talked about it.
Yeah.
Week 3 we talked about it. Week 6 we talked about it. Week 10 we talked about it. But then you're just so focused on the playoffs that it's not even a massive topic of discussion. But for me, the Rocket Richard has to be given to Austin Matthews. I think he's gonna get 60. I know people said 70. I don't think it's going to happen. People said 65. They want to chase his personal record. They want to chase what McDavid did last year. I just think they're more focused this year. And as long as Matthews gets to 60, I'd say it's been an extremely successful season for him.
Yeah, for me, it's more like I think that 100-point mark's attainable for Matthews, and I think that would be pretty crazy. I think he's at 84 right now with 15 games to go. So, again, you get a point a game, you're at 99. Something like that would be pretty awesome. If Matthews does not hit the 100-point mark, I don't think he would be considered for any of the other awards, such as the the Hart Trophy. But, again, if he was able to score, call it 60 goals and give 40 assists, I think you could consider him for it and keep him in the debate with Kucherov, McKinnon, and Connor McDavid, who had a great overtime last night to cap off his other assist there.
Yeah, I mean, you could have him in the conversation. He's played well, and that's the issue when it comes down to it, because Matthews has had such a great season this year. But when you look at it, there's so many other options, so many other players, so many people that we haven't even talked about. Like, look at Hellebuck. Why has he not been established as or even talked about at all for the MVP conversation? I mean, yeah, it's not a goaltender-driven award, but look at what he's provided for his team. And there's just been so many players that are eligible and could easily win this award. For me, I know I had Kucherov. I'm still looking at McKinnon right now. I haven't really decided. I might sprinkle a little bit more money to bet on Kucherov, but we'll see what the next couple games look like.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, I'm so happy that these four are still in the race and still in the talks. It's not like anyone's dropped off. They're all elevating their play to help their teams
Sure.
make the playoffs. For me, it's pretty crazy because you have Colorado, Winnipeg, and Dallas all having incredible seasons statistically. Like, not even with their players, just like their actual team records are pretty awesome. So those three powerhouses. You look at Tampa, who had 5 goals last night, and Kucherov was involved in 4 of them. You got the Oilers, who scored 3, McDavid was involved in 2. Like, all of this is such a good conversation, and I think it's moves us on to our next topic.
Well, that's why when we look at where we're at now in March and what we were talking about in September, it's almost like just two polar opposite conversations. Like, talking about hockey all summer long, talking about leading to the regular season. There's just so many statements and things that we said. I know you want to bring up a couple to just kind of reevaluate them and be like, if you were to tell me this 7 months ago, I would have probably turned around and said, all right, buddy, like, I'll keep that receipt, but no problem.
Yeah, exactly. Now that you say the word receipt, we did both mention on one of our podcasts that we were going to go back and take accountability for some things we said. And when we looked at the standings about 2 months ago, we both took our picks for who the most fraudulent team was and which team was going to drop off. My pick was Philly. I said they wouldn't make the playoffs. I don't know if you remember who your pick was.
I think, was it Boston?
It was Boston. I mean, while your pick was bad, mine wasn't great, so I'm not going to – I think we both have to be a little better there. But maybe a topic that a lot of people were high on last year were just the New Jersey Devils, and I think going into this season, they didn't really downgrade at all. You had guys like Timo Meier who were good and had that bit of room for drop-off, or he started the year slow. But who would have said that the Washington Capitals would have been stronger than the Pittsburgh Penguins and the New Jersey Devils in their division? Like, that's a very weird topic for me because they've lost Anthony Mantha, they've lost Evgeny Kuznetsov. They haven't gained much outside of some depth scoring from their young guys, right? Like, I'm impressed by them, and I think nobody would have said the Caps would have been in a playoff spot by now. I think there would just be no upside to say that statement, right?
Yeah, I know I was talking about earlier in the podcast for them to win the division. That was a mistake by me. I was going off the top of my head there, but Rangers are far ahead of them. Talking about the Capitals and how well they've been playing this year, I mean, it just goes to show that nothing is more dangerous than a team that they don't have their back against the wall. They have nothing to lose, and that's exactly what the Capitals are looking at right now. I mean, to establish the elephant in the room, they're staring at a barrel of a shotgun that says that Ovi needs to get to that Wayne Gretzky goal record, right? I mean, that at the end of the day, the GM did come out and say, look, we're not going to do our rebuild until Ovechkin gets that record. And they've not only focused on that, and Ovi has, 21, 22 goals, I believe, so far this year.
Yeah.
They're looking good heading into the playoffs, and their roster hasn't really shaped out to be an all-star caliber roster. They've traded away some key pieces, like you mentioned. Kuzi, Backstrom went down with an injury. He's out for the year. Mantha's gone. They've struggled with goaltending the past couple years, but like I said, a team that has nothing to lose. They've been great this year. And honestly, if Washington could sneak into the playoffs, I don't want to call them my Florida pick, but if they could pick up a round, who knows what they look like facing a pretty decent team in the second round.
Exactly. Yeah, it's going to be so unpredictable. So I think it's tough to know if we can even sleep on the Caps tonight as they face the Toronto Maple Leafs at home, right? Like that's going to be a great game to check out. Ovi always seems to be dialed against the Leafs, so that'll be nice. And I think in terms of March, we have only kind of 10, 11 days left, which means obviously March Madness is beginning. The word basketball always is the first word to come up, but I think we have to acknowledge that the Frozen Four is right here as well. And anyone who doesn't follow NCAA hockey, pretty much there's D1 and there's also D3 hockey, but there's no NCAA championships for D2 hockey just because there's only 8 teams who are technically considered D2. So it's a little weird coming from Canadians to say this too. Like I'm not an expert. I don't know about you, Sans, but
Yeah, I've never been a big watcher of Division One hockey, Division One football, or anything like that. I've always looked at the big leagues, NHL, NFL, all that good stuff. But when it comes to March Madness, it'd be ridiculous not to catch a couple games, bet on it, watch it, talk about it with your buddies. So I'm definitely hyped. I know that they do that massive Frozen Four tournament. Is it coming up? Is it soon?
yeah. So the Frozen Four is coming up in, I want to say, 10 days. They have these regionals, they call it, before the actual before the seeds are locked. Like it's before the 1 versus 4 and 2 versus 3. So it's going to take a while. It's not really scheduled to finish till April 10th, call it, but for the D3 they actually have it coming up in a few days. So it's more in schedule with the NCAA basketball. So obviously a lot of sports.
Yeah, it's going to be a great way to end off March. Looking forward to April. I don't know if we want to end this podcast maybe tossing out our pick for the NCAA March Madness, or should we save that for next week? I know a couple games will be underway, so I don't know if we want to do it now. It's up to you.
We got to do it now. Yeah, let's do it now.
All right.
Do you want to go ahead?
I mean, yeah, I've been the absolute opposite of Sharp the past couple of years. I'm going to go with Gonzaga as my winner this year. I think it's finally their year to come out of it. I know, like I said, I've been terrible. I've picked the wrong winner, I think, 6 years in a row. But Gonzaga's my team. I'm gonna rock with them.
Okay, I don't mind that. They obviously had a good strong year again, and I think that was to be expected. But I'm gonna have to go with a bit more of an underdog. I think these guys are a 4 seed who I'm about to mention, and that is Kentucky. I think Kentucky is going to come out strong, and they're known to be able to win a few rounds. They're not known to go far in the tournament, but I just think there's got to be some upsets, and it might make their but their bracket a little easier without them knowing it. So I'm going to go with Kentucky, and I think that as a runner-up, just in case Kentucky does get a little unlucky, I'm going to go with St. Mary's if Kentucky loses.
Hey, St. Mary's went on a run a couple years ago. Either way, we're going to be watching a lot of March Madness. Looking forward to it. I think it starts tomorrow, but that is going to be it for today. We look forward to chatting with you guys on March 27th, and stay tuned because we might have a great little interview coming out. And if you did not tune into our one with OHL player Nick Sema, make sure to check that one out.
For sure, yes. Thanks for wrapping that up, Sans, and we'll see you guys next week.
Cheers.